The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by 2T Fitness and the Vegas Beer Guys.
The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. You have been forewarned. Part 2. Today we're talking Three Men and a Little Lady. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man you know, the man you love, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi, Tom.
Kick it.
No, fuck.
Oh, introducing Mike, Peter, and Jack. You're rhyming three dads doing the Mary rap. Just a little lady, you need your sleep. Don't want no jive talking about something to eat. We're partying down, dancing till dawn. Your food spitting, toilet training changed our song. We're situated bachelors, fathers in waiting. Rather hang with you than the one he's been dating. Say, Mary, did you wash your face? Say, Mary, did you brush your teeth? Mike be nimble, Peter be quick. Jack busts a rhyme and we make it slick. To little Lady Mary, we say please just close your eyes and cop some Z's. Ooga, ooga, ooga. Just close them eyes and cop some Z's. Winka, wink, wink. Just close them eyes and cop some Z's. Ooga, ooga, ooga. Just close them eyes and cop some Z's.
Holy shit. All I could think during that scene was that child would not be able to get to sleep for hours. Hours!
Look, I know that there's a lot politically
To
and
unpack.
historically
Yes.
wrong
Yeah.
with this rap. However, I think it's tightly written, well performed, and I struggle, and this is an overall note for the movie, I struggle to separate it from my overall affection for both the movie and some of the actors.
Yeah.
Particularly Ted Danson. Because
Oh.
when he's rapping, I'm put in mind of one of my favorite Cheers episodes,
Mm-hmm.
in which Sam Malone becomes a TV sports commentator
Yes.
and does such a terrible job that he decides to start rapping his news reports. And this is my overall problem with this film, is how much am I drawn to it through sheer affection, and how much is it actually a good movie and a funny movie.
I
And
can't...
half the time I don't know.
Yes, exactly. I can't even begin to tell you how my expectation of this movie was reversed into deep thought about this movie as a sequel, as a film itself,
Yeah.
separate from a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
This rap is maybe one of the least interesting conversations we could have about it. You know what I mean? And yet,
Yeah.
you're right in the sense of the problems that it has politically, and
Yeah.
yet I feel the same way that you do in terms of the over the topness. You know, clearly there's a definite sense from everybody that is involved in this movie that they don't understand. You know, there's a hubris behind it. They don't understand why what they're doing is wrong.
Yes.
And yet it's still likable.
Yeah.
That's kind
absolutely.
of interesting to me.
There's several examples of that.
And like
And
you,
also
I could
I'd
say that about a lot of this movie.
And there's another split in this movie, I think, between and the rap is a prime example of one of these, between parts of 90s movies that now seem unthinkable in modern day movies, versus moments where you feel like they're actually kind of ahead of the game and they feels very contemporary, very modern in a way you don't expect a 1990 movie to be.
I've got many notes that are very, very similar, yes.
And it is like 1-on-1.
Mm-hmm.
Or 1-to-1 ratio of that almost.
Yeah.
Which is why, you know, you can enjoy a moment like the Three Men and a Little Lady rap more than you would in a movie that is full of that kind of
Right,
stuff.
right.
It's not. It doesn't.
It's a
It doesn't
one-off in
represent the
this
whole
movie. It's a one-off moment.
Well,
Well,
a 2 or a 3 off. There's a lot of examples. Most of them are not as don't have the potential to
that have
offend in
that
the
have
way this
problems
one.
with race.
Oh, do you consider the British a race?
Yeah, well, okay, all right, fine. Yeah,
Because
you're
I
right.
don't, and that makes the second half of the movie palatable for me.
Okay, good.
If I had any kind of cultural pride, I'd probably despise this movie. Because the second half is really laying into my
Yes.
people in a big way.
You're right. You're right.
But I don't mind. I agree, mostly.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't guessed, we're catching back up with single sequels from 1990. For further
Yes.
information, please listen to our previous episode.
Yeah.
We'll explain the long journey, but essentially, Tom and I discovered that there are 4 1990 movies that are single sequels that we missed, and this is the first one we're doing. Three Men
And if
and
you
a
haven't
Little
heard
Lady.
the first 4, Three Men and a Little Lady. And if you haven't heard the first 4, you can go back and listen to that. They're at the very beginning of the podcast.
Absolutely.
Scroll down that feed.
Back when it was questionable as to whether or not we knew what we were doing.
Yes. Yes. We covered that.
We covered that at the end of
Yeah.
the episode.
Don't
We-
skip the last episode.
Yeah, don't do it.
We had a heart-to-heart with ourselves.
So
We've to paraphrase a famous song, we've been to me.
I'm excited to talk about this. So Three Men and a Little Lady, obviously a 1990 sequel, 40% on Rotten Tomato.
Well, obvious now.
Yeah.
Wasn't back
Yeah,
in
you're right.
fucking 2 years ago when we missed this completely.
That's great. 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, Tom.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing hard with that.
Yeah, I'm not either, but I
would give it the benefit of the doubt more.
yeah, I think so.
But I can see where that rating is coming from.
It's directed by Emil Ardolino.
This guy's got some form when it comes to this kind of movie.
You know, Dirty Dancing, Chances Are, Sister Act, The Nutcracker.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he's
You know,
definitely.
I
he's
was
got a type.
surprised to see. Yeah, I was surprised to see all those movies and realize he's not on my radar. I don't remember
Yeah.
him. I realize I did not remember by name the director of Dirty Dancing.
You can really thread the needle with those
Yeah,
movies, right? It's
right,
like you
yes.
can. That's not a big surprise that he's in charge of those movies.
No, I don't think. Yeah, right. Listen, I don't
But
have
he's inheriting. But of course, he's inheriting the franchise from
Leonard
Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy. And as I understand it, Leonard Nimoy was approached to do the sequel, did not do it. So I think he was going to doing Funny About Love with Gene Wilder. And I recall reading that he felt that was a mistake.
Which part?
Doing that movie and not this movie.
Oh, I'm gonna say he's not averse to doing sequels, as we know.
No, yeah.
We've just watched
We've
2
covered
of them,
Yeah.
and he's very good at it, as we know.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah, it's curious. I suppose in the back of my mind, I assumed he did this too. But I was also interested to see.
I remembered that he did not do the sequel.
I'm also interested to see that the series was taken over by someone with such form making. I guess. I know, what would you call them? Like, not quite romantic comedies, but definitely in that ilk.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
I guess Sister Act is a romantic comedy, you could just about say. Dirty Dancing isn't.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that if you told me that this director directed Chances Are and Sister Act, I'd think, okay, I get that seems like, I don't want to dismiss them as much as saying the cookie cutter kind of aspect of those three movies. I get that.
Yeah.
Dirty Dancing's kind of an outlier
Yeah.
in which he seems to be doing something different in that movie. But yet it still makes sense.
Interestingly, we have not covered Dirty Dancing, but have covered Dirty Dancing 2 Havana Nights.
Yes, of course.
Because of the world we have created for ourselves.
This is the life we've chosen.
This is the life we've chosen.
All right.
Give it the full Hyman Roth cough.
I have
The Hyman
similar
cough.
I have similar vibes that I did during the Bad News Bears sequels. I could not find any
information.
Could find no information on a budget, but opening weekend $13.7 million, and in the USA and in the world 71.6. I doubt they spent a lot of money making this in 1990. Even if the budget was $20 million.
Well, I was one of the world. Saw this at the movie theater.
I was going to ask you.
Whenever it came to us, which would have been, I imagine, 91.
Okay. I definitely saw it in the theater.
I didn't realize. I don't think I've seen it since then.
I have not seen it in a very long time, for sure.
And it's amazing how much of it stuck with me.
Yeah, me too.
It's so much so that I actually, and we'll talk about this in more detail later, I think this movie shaped my thoughts about
fatherhood?
Some aspects of British life.
Oh, okay. That's amazing.
And I only realized that seeing it like a few days ago.
Wow.
And going back to it. But that's definitely part of the affection I hold from the movie. The other part of it is the actors on both sides of the pond.
Mm-hmm. Well,
particularly Ted Danson,
who
I feel like is perennially underrated. I think
I do too, and I had the same.
The man is gonna die, and he will still be you could have
underutilized.
Even all the sort of post-death plaudits that people put on us will be still underrated.
It'll be half as much as he deserves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And when I watch some of the work he's done, say in Damages or
Damages was fucking out of this world. I swear he shouldn't have been in the second season of that.
Yeah, right.
Or the third season. I swear that was a game day decision to just can we do this without Ted Danson?
But I think about that or I think it's the second season of Fargo.
The
work he's been doing for years on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yes.
And like you, I
particularly like him in Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, I grew up on Cheers.
Mm-hmm.
Cheers is one of my all-time favorite sitcoms ever.
Agreed. Yeah.
Like a top 3, I think. I
sort
love
of undeniable.
Love that. Yeah, love that show. And
it's hard to argue against that.
There are times when I'm watching either of these movies, the first one or this one, where I think to myself that I am watching a man play essentially the same character as Sam Malone, and yet he seems completely different.
But I think that's the key to understanding why Ted Danson is better than you probably think he is.
Right.
The man is a genuine character actor. He's been utilized in comedy. He's not a comedian.
Right. Yeah.
He almost to sort of Gene Hackman standards of.
Oh my God! I can't believe you just said that. I was going to bring that up.
He's a dramatic character actor who has a gift for comedy.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way Hackman is.
Yeah.
But I never lose the sense of the character he's playing.
Right.
Which is interesting in this movie because he is the designated comic relief, even more so than Steve Guttenberg, which
Right.
surprised me.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
I mean, he's literally, you know, there are moments in this movie when he's either leaning
He's
into
the gag
or
man.
actually looking straight into the camera.
Yes, barrel. Right.
And you know, they use him as a clown
Mm-hmm.
in both these movies, but particularly this movie.
And yet
Especially
there
the
are
ending of this
a
movie.
couple moments, and I won't speak to it yet because I want to get to it when we
Yeah.
get to it. But there's a moment later in the film where he becomes the anchor in a way
Yeah.
that surprised me, and it was a scene that I so greatly appreciated. It honestly kind of gobsmacked me.
But even though he is kind of has this sort of rodeo clown
Mm-hmm.
quality in this film, he never succumbs to that. He always
Right.
rises above it. It's always Jack.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's astonishing performance.
Couldn't
He-
agree more.
In this movie particularly, he's asked to do a lot of heavy lifting comedically, and he comes out on top not because everything he does is hilarious, although it is, but it's because he somehow retains the sense of the character behind the jokes. Just sort of, you know, again, and I felt the same in Damages. I was like, this guy's really funny, but that's not what's getting me about this character.
Yeah, right.
Arthur Frobisher. See, I remember his name.
That's great.
That's what a dancing does for you.
Well, and I'll tell you, I have some things to say about Tom Selleck too, because there was
Me too.
there was a lot in this movie that surprised me about Tom Selleck, because there are moments in Tom Selleck's career, whatever, Folks, or what's the movie he did with Paulina Poroskova? Anyway, there are moments in Tom Selleck's career where he goes for the funny, and
Mm.
you know, it's funny. You can see a shtick. You can see a shtick that Tom Selleck uses when he needs to be funny. And in
You've
this,
somehow not mentioned Magnum PI at this point. I don't know how that's. I
Well,
don't know how you've managed that.
I consider Magnum PI a thing all unto its own.
Oh, I agree.
And
But
that character
That's
is
Tom.
so.
That's Tom Selleck's shtick, right there.
Yeah, I guess, but I feel
In the
it's
best
I
possible
feel
way.
like it's always grounded in the character, and to me, it's like he borrows from that into other roles where I can see the actor and not the character. In Magnum
Sure.
PI, I always see the character, and I think Ted Danson is the MVP of this movie. But when I watch Tom Selleck in this movie, I do see Peter.
I don't think we're gonna have much disagreement. I felt exactly the same way. And
Okay.
I think it was such a good choice of this movie, and I don't think it's necessarily the case with the original. They pushed him into the heartthrob box,
Mm-hmm.
and often when you go back to movies from yesteryear, and you look at who was supposed to be the heartthrob at that time,
Yeah. Right.
often you go, "What were they thinking?"
Why? What?
None of that applies to Tom Selleck.
No, yeah.
I mean, he quite literally seduces me in this movie with his voice, with his body, with his face, all of it.
Yeah.
I'm his for this.
All right, good.
He's such a seductive actor, and that's something this movie gets more than most Tom Selleck
Most movies,
I've seen.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it makes plot sense for him to sort of become for this movie to be a like a heteronormative romance, for want of a better word.
Okay, yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's the best choice given what the first movie was,
Yeah, right.
but I like the fact that they're leaning into Tom Selleck as the device for this
Okay, yeah.
to get you there, because he's just dreamy throughout.
That's great.
I even had moments where I was like, I don't want Harrison Ford not to have played Indiana Jones,
Right.
But I would love it if there was like a sort of James Bond like way to sort of
Go
have
back in
Tom
time
Selleck
and
be
see what
him
he would
for
have
a
done.
while,
Yeah, right.
and then Harrison Ford could go back to being him or something like that.
Yeah. I get it.
You see
Well-
him in a tux. Oh my god.
Yeah. I got a question for you right off the bat.
Am I gay? Possibly for Tom Selleck.
All right.
Carry on. No, carry on.
You do you. But we've talked about logos in the past. And when I see the touchstone logo,
Yeah.
it's like the Orion. It invokes the warm and fuzzies for me. And this was
I
a
agree.
division of Disney where I saw that logo and the first thing I thought was I'm going to see a movie I like.
Yeah. The only issue I have with it is that the music and the logo taken independently are so ominous. Doesn't really fit a light comedy. It's definitely a contrast to the opening to the actual opening of this movie.
Yes, right.
It's not a smooth transition into a what do we say, sped up footage,
Yes. So
synthesizer accompanied by synthesizer
I gotta tell
saxophone.
you, seeing this opening really threw me for a loop because, to me, I thought it was such an interesting way for a sequel to start, because you're getting so much information, but you're getting it in sped up music montage.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, like, are there other sequels that have done this? Because this should be an impasse, but I'm not sure that it is.
I think for me the confusion was, why does this need to be sped up?
Okay, yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah,
Because it's already a passage of time montage. The events are already going fast.
to me it was. To me, I thought it was a given that this was all the stuff they wanted to show. But if
Yes.
they didn't speed it up, it would be too long, so they condensed it to fit.
But
The credits.
No, but the montage makes it short. You don't need to speed it up. I understand the need to bridge the gaps between the films. But why does it need to look like an undercranked silent film?
But I also think it, in and of itself, metaphorically, it represents the movie kind of well. Because there are so many things in this movie that I like, and yet the important stuff narratively, a lot is clunky and not earned or written well. And there are so many convenient devices this movie uses just to
Yeah.
push the narrative forward, whereas really what could happen is one conversation could be had and this movie could be over in 40 minutes. But
Sure, yes.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, we're back to the Three's Company.
Yeah, right.
It's sort of it's where it's where Shakespeare meets Three's Company, right? There's the sort of
Yeah,
if you resolve one misunderstanding, the whole thing would be over in seconds.
yes. And yet, hearing me say that, it would sound as though I've got issues with the writing, and I do. Yet, in the development of characters, they address those things.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It
They give
definitely-
reasons why the
it
characters
turns both
aren't
ways,
doing
yeah.
aren't doing the obvious things that they should be doing. And that to me made this a fascinating movie to watch.
Yeah, and again, it's a movie that in so many ways is divided against itself.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, from story onwards,
Right.
there are two movies here,
Yeah,
this
yes,
movie.
absolutely.
two very distinct movies. And that's just another example of how it's divided against itself. Sometimes the screenwriting is lazy,
Right.
unconventional, and then other times it's extremely unconventional and is actually working quite hard.
Yes.
So
And
again,
is nuanced
it's
too.
split. There's
Yeah.
a duality here. They get through a ton in this opening sequence.
So much.
What struck me, as a parent who's recently gone through these stages of childhood,
Mm-hmm.
they really need to think more about divisions of labor. They're all there all the time. That's
Right.
not how. That's not how co-parenting works, guys. It's like tag. As soon as you have to just
Yes.
tag team out.
Right.
Um,
It's like tag team wrestling. Because little children are small but relentless opponents.
yes, I both want to talk about my next note, but I also feel like
Okay.
it's gonna open a can of worms, and I use that metaphor quite accurately. And this is the note. I'll just read it.
Okay.
I see your Superman 2 little boy penis, and I raise you 3 men and a lady little girl ass.
Yes. Yes.
And after that, I've just written sequel shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny you
Quite
say
literally
that,
in this case.
because I wrote down, this is a little boy penis replacement.
Yeah.
But I also had this conscious thought of movies from the 80s, and I know this is 1990, but
That's a very important point. It's
Yeah.
still the 80s.
I
The
think
90s
so too.
hasn't happened yet.
Right. And so there's such a difference between a movie made then and a movie made now, where I think that, it would be considered obscene now, almost.
Right.
And it was just a given. This is a child,
Yeah.
so it's not
Yeah.
weird.
Yep, no one walked out
Yeah,
in 1990.
never.
No one thought it was exploitative.
But it really, it really made me think of how different culture is,
Yes.
where we are now as opposed to then. Just with one little shot of an ass. I
And
had
what
to-
the titles also reminded me of is, I'm trying to think, like, when this started and when this ended. Early 90s American rom-coms that were based on French
Yeah, right.
media. I mean, Ted Danson's in at least one more of these. There's a couple of Gerard Depardieu
There's a birdcage.
French-American remakes.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, are we still going to French media? I mean, there's Intouchable. That was a pretty big
Well,
American remake of a French hit.
I was not astounded, but I was surprised to get the title of Three Men in a Cradle.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, is Coffin. So at first I thought, wait, is that movie titled Three Men in a Coffin? Because I don't know. I don't know the language.
In which case,
Tom.
I approve of of
Yeah.
remaking it as an upbeat comedy if it ends with a child in a coffin.
But I did think it was interesting that an original written sequel, because it said based on still,
Huh.
and so it made me wonder, how long is that movie, Three Men in a Cradle?
Yeah.
How much story is or is it just
Or is it
kind of
saying
like based on
yeah.
characters by,
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
But it seemed to me that there was a lot of these around this time in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Cousins, that's definitely
Mhm.
the Ted Danson movie that was originally a
Yeah.
French. Les Cousines. That's not, that really is what it's called. I know that sounded
I know.
facetious, but it was. Blame the French, not me.
I do.
So do I. And then I thought something that, like, a lot of it is not terribly funny. And then it ends with a really good joke, which is blindfolding Mary as she goes into the restroom in the baseball stadium.
Yeah.
I thought, there's like a glimmer of real comedy in an otherwise sort of like kidified
Right.
comedy movie. And that's kind of how it goes from now on. It's sort of like you're definitely in not a kids movie, but a child friendly movie.
Sure.
And then occasionally you get a moment of really solid to excellent comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes back to the sort of baseline of average jokes.
Yeah.
For a while.
Mm-hmm.
So that the opening sequence is like it encapsulates the whole movie.
Yeah, right.
In various ways. And one of my favorite shots in the movie, and I think it's actually really intelligent filmmaking, is the shot of Mary following Mary through the house with what looks like a Steadicam.
Yeah.
Or some kind of mobile camera. And that was a really effective way of showing that the perspective is a change from the grown-ups to the child.
To the child, right.
We're now following
I have
movie
the same
through
note.
Mary.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, it's a really efficient, intelligent way to make that point.
Mm-hmm.
And great sequel filmmaking, because
Yes, right.
I mean, we haven't discussed something which, even recently we were saying, what are the examples of sequels that capitalize on characters aging?
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't think of many. This is one.
This is a good example.
The Omen, we were talking about The Omen at the time, and we were sort of saying it's a rarity, but it seems like sequels have the potential to do this, but they don't often capitalize on that potential. This certainly does.
Well, obviously, because the first movie comes out in 1987, and so this movie comes out in 1990, but I couldn't help but think about, and there's a time jump for the character, because the character is an infant, now 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't help but think about Boyhood while watching this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And thought if the franchise went on, 3 Men and a Teenager, there was a plan for a 3 Men and a Bride.
Yeah.
I mean, even recently, even in the last 5 to 8 years, I think there was a plan for a 3 Men and a Bride that just never kind of came together. And as I understand it, there's a reboot with Zac Efron being planned. But that speaks
we'll have to deal with
maybe.
someday.
But that speaks to what you're talking about just good sequel ideas and good filmmaking.
Yeah. Capitalizing on what is inherent to film sequels and film series.
Yeah.
And I had the same thought that it's interesting that this stopped here, given the endless potential to sort of find Mary at
various points of her life,
stages of her life. Yeah, you could have at least got one more out of it.
Right.
And I wonder why they didn't.
Well, listen, we're not too far, but I've got a big conversation that I want to start. So why don't we take a break and then we'll come back?
Sure.
All right. We'll do that, ladies and gentlemen, right after this. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing the 1990 sequel, 3 Men and a Little Lady, directed by Emile Ardolino, the guy you don't know that you know.
Yeah.
So, Tom, I was hinting at...
He made a lot of films that you probably rented at some point.
Yeah, right. I was hinting at a big conversation I wanted to have Something
Yeah.
really interesting was happening as I was watching the beginning of this movie, because I had nothing but questions. I I thought to
At
myself,
the beginning of a sequel?
yeah, I thought to myself, by today's standards, is anything that's happening in this house okay? Is it weird? Is it not weird? What's
Yeah.
going on? What happens with these men's lives? With who they're dating? How does that work? What's going on? And the second I had so many questions, I didn't think I could stand it anymore. The movie addresses it. And
Yes.
Nancy Travis's character keeps saying, "Is this sustainable? What's going on?
Yeah.
Isn't this weird for me, for Mary, for you three? Like, can we just keep doing this, or should this end? What's going on?" And I thought that was so interesting that this movie was
It's
able
also,
to scratch that itch at the exact moment I needed it.
but from a contemporary perspective, it's also one of the sadder aspects of the movie that they do question it so much, because
Yeah.
their idea of like a non-traditional family unit is far more commonplace now. And what they're taught, the kind of the family unit that they have in this movie is kind of groundbreaking in how non-traditional it is.
Mhm.
And the fact that they move away from that so quickly and try and make it heteronormative, a romance, romance of marriage between one man and one woman again. It sort of smacks to me of like neoliberalism and how that was trying to like merge the forces of conservatism with that of liberalism and meet
Well,
in
but
the
I
middle,
thought it was
which is the story of the 1990s. With
yeah,
Clinton
but I
and
thought it
Blair.
was interesting because in 1990 it was still grow up, get married, buy a house, have kids,
Yeah.
which is not really our life anymore. But you can see that moral narrative
Mm-hmm.
thrust upon the characters in this movie because that's what we believed then.
Yeah. But they're in a kind of utopia, and I wish
Uh-huh.
the resolution of this movie was that they reintegrate that utopia when it's broken apart.
Mm.
And that is kind of what happens.
I was going to say, I don't know that we don't know that is,
But we end up, skip all the way to the end. We end up with a much more conservative version of the family unit than we had at the
Sure,
beginning.
absolutely.
So it feels like a compromise between
But I
traditional and non-traditional parenting.
You can't get
And-
away from that, but I also think that this movie is strangely nimble enough to focus enough on characters in a way where all of that makes sense. It's okay if that's the end product if two people do truly fall in love,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, and I mean it's not unusual, to
Right.
quote Tom Jones. Like a show, like lots of media that shows groundbreaking representations of sex, of romance, marriage, like Sex and the City, that ended with everyone getting married
Yeah,
off.
right.
Like it was a musical from the 1930s.
Sure.
So there's always that sort of the repressive forces of traditionalism
Mm-hmm.
on these kinds of narratives. Even in the kinds of narratives that are trying to subvert those norms, which I think this absolutely was by the last movie, ending with this kind of, for want of a better word, modern family.
Yeah, right.
But it's interesting that this film is kind of about taking that apart and rearranging it in a way that's more palatable for a mainstream audience, almost. But that's more about the political project of the movie. I agree with you in terms of the screenplay. And I do find,
there's very little narrative.
in lots of
Sorry, go ahead.
no, in lots of small ways, I think this is still very groundbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Like the scene which is kind of coming up, where is it Tom Selleck? I can't remember who it was. Says to Mary, "It's okay to be different."
Yeah. No,
It's like,
Ted.
yeah, sure.
It's Jack that says that, but
It's Jack. It's like, sure, well, that's the white heteronormative version of this. But in 1990, I bet that line meant a lot to someone who saw this movie. Just saying that.
But
out
that
loud.
that also felt like one of those convenient moments to me, because that's the moment where they're interviewing at the school and Mary is seeing kids for the first time. She's drawn a picture of what's going, of her family.
Yeah.
And I forget what's the verbiage she uses? Bonus daddy or my
That's good. Yeah, I think it is that. Yeah.
something like that. So
Yeah.
she has her biological daddy, her mom, and then a bonus daddy and a second bonus daddy. And one kid tells her,
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that this movie had the kid that talks to her and makes her feel weird about it. He said, you can have 2 dads, but you can't have 3. That's weird.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's that moment of a father with a daughter, and he says, it's okay to be different. And she just sort of smiles like that fixes all problems. But she's probably internalized a bit more. And so to me, it was one of those.
But I think that I'm thinking less about within the world, more just sort of talking to the audience at that point.
Yeah.
And it just stood out to me. It's like, that's a great thing for this movie to be doing, is just to say that.
I agree. Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, it's that sort of thing where you don't realize how progressive you are until you encounter the rest of the world. So, this private school system and the other kids are saying, what is the norm? And she's living outside the norm.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure how much of that is representative of the movie's point of view, and how much of that is like how much they're supposed to be the antagonists, or how much they're just supposed to be the tough love, just coming in and saying, if you're gonna live in the world, this can't go on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mixture of both at different times, I think.
Right. Because it's the people working at the school that say she's a bright kid and she's lovely. And
yeah, and they keep trying to label them. They would like, are you gay? And they're like, no, they do.
Of course, they have the homophobia moment. Yeah,
the homophobia moment, which is realistic enough, I think, in this context, though unnecessary as it always is.
Right.
But it's the institutions that are trying to turn them into something they're not. And there's a way in this movie sort of plays out like a tragedy. Which I don't think is like how it's supposed to. It's not what it's not the kind of movie that they're telling us it is. But if you sort of track it, you can track it like a tragedy, where this utopian society that they've created is shattered apart.
Fallen to pieces
by the return of traditional institutions like marriage and schools.
But what I found interesting was that
British people.
What I found interesting was that this movie's able to do something with a very out of the norm for the time family situation, but make it feel kind of normal in the sense of there's plenty of 2-parent households. Parents get divorced, and all of a sudden a child is splitting time between a mother and a father, and now might be dealing with a stepmother and a stepfather at some point.
Right.
And this movie is able to make that kind of situation feel like the situation that's happening to Mary, just within the confines of the rather unusual family dynamic that she lives in.
Yes.
That made it feel like it was normalizing, to a certain extent, their family.
I agree.
And that part of it, I found progressive and interesting. I found that to be...
Yeah, no, I agree. And groundbreaking in its way. I mean, it's explored. I don't know how much it's explored in this kind of family-friendly comedy. It's certainly explored in sex movies a lot. There's sort of the idea of the throuple,
sure,
that kind of thing. But normally, in more in reference to like sexual practices than family arrangements. So, it's It's really interesting. I found it again very, very thought provoking. It reminded me of both the potential of the 90s and the tragedy of it, of it kind of descending into this sort of neoliberal ideal of what we all should be. But that's skipping way ahead. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have a penis?
That's what I thought your line was going to be.
That's something I remember from seeing it.
From seeing it the first time?
Let's say 91.
There are some
Yeah, I
moments
remember that
that
joke.
really had me laughing out loud in this movie. Ted Danson arriving to the school interview as Dracula and saying, "Good afternoon," really got me. Mary saying, not even necessarily Mary saying, "Do you have a penis?" But when Sylvia takes her to the bathroom and she comes back shaking her head at both men, that really got me. I laughed out loud. I had to pause the film.
And something, just to sort of to talk overall about how the movie works. Something that is crucial to remember is that the individual performances are great, and everyone works together well, especially the central trio.
Yeah.
And it's a marriage of content and style. So we're told that this is like a harmonious unit. Like they're like three kinds of masculinity, all working together in the most cooperative and positive way. And that's kind of going on with the acting as well. It's like they make up for each other's. Not that any of them have deficiencies, but they kind of they slip in and out of different roles in the film, in the trio, in the same way they're supposed to in this family. And if you'd picked three other actors, it wouldn't have worked like this.
I agree with you.
Even the glue that is Steve Guttenberg is just as important as the other. That I obviously do not admire Steve Guttenberg as much as I admire Ted Danson or Tom Selleck, but his place in this movie is essential.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he plays it as well as anyone.
Sure.
He plays his character as well as anyone. He gets a little bit Police Academy in some of the reaction shots, but you hired Steve Guttenberg. You hired Steve Guttenberg. What do you expect?
I remember so much of this movie that I even remember. I remember Guttenberg talking about press for this movie. And I remember him having this joke about, hey, listen, if you make a great movie, you've earned one more sequel. But when you're doing 5 or 6 or 7 and citizens are going on patrol or you're going to Moscow, that's just ridiculous. And he got a good heavy laugh,
That's a remarkable degree of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Let's not forget Steve Guttenberg saved us all from nuclear Armageddon.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just gonna leave it there, and I'll leave that footnote hanging. You can research that. But I'm not joking. I think also to add to that, no, it's not just the trio that are working well. The way they're interacting with Mary is really important as well. There's lots of kind of easygoing, improv-heavy moments.
Yeah.
Where they're just interacting with her, and it's very loose, and there's not much going on. But they really matter. Because they're first of all, the three men are reintroduced through her. And so she needs to have a moment with all of them. And that is really, I think that's really well handled. All of that, the tummy raspberry and
yeah, right.
And what do you think about Sylvia? Nancy Travis's Sylvia.
I've always liked her in these movies. I was going to ask you what you think about her accent.
Well, it's less her accent, which is serviceable.
Okay.
But the fact that she's a fake British character who has fake British qualities, like the inability to cook.
Yeah, right.
It's like you're doubling down on the fake. But it's like
yeah.
I can't remember if that when you said earlier you was like I have questions, I thought, oh my god, it's been so long since I've seen Three Men and a Baby. Mike's gonna tell me there isn't even a baby in Three Men and a Baby. That was gonna be a Bad News Bears situation.
No, yeah,
again.
you're okay.
Do you remember Three Men and a Baby? Is she a terrible cook in that as well, or was that just a...
No, I mean, she doesn't have enough screen time for you to get to know her in that way.
Oh, this is a new quality.
Yeah.
Wow, they didn't really overthink that, did they?
No, but I mean,
and it's interesting.
it's low-hanging fruit. It's low-hanging script writing fruit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
kept thinking, because they're doing it for the laziest type of joke.
Yeah.
And yet they're extending that joke by showing
it's a runner.
It's a runner. You see a practice within the house of how they throw away food without her knowing it, which means they're all just going hungry and wasting a lot of money on food.
Yeah.
It's
hard to believe Tom Selleck retains that physique.
Right.
Eating nothing.
Yes. And so, at a certain point, after 5 years, I would think somebody would say, how about I cook dinner?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's also, I mean, again, that's another sort of, another area where it feels quite dated. Like, none of them are taking the lead in the kitchen. It's like, there are still some gender barriers.
Yeah, right.
Even in this progressive family unit, there's
right.
still a division of gender labor.
Yes.
That even this terrible, terrible cook is still the go-to.
Making the food.
Yeah, it's still the go-to chef in the house. This also this reminded me of a lot of other media in the time, mostly television shows that were aimed at like yuppie audiences, like 30-something,
sure,
or Northern Exposure, specifically with Steve Guttenberg's character being a cartoonist, and he keeps insisting he's a satirist. I thought that's something I could imagine in an episode of 30-something.
Sure.
So there's that going on, which is very much of the period. And this part of the movie is, I guess, closer to the original in a lot of senses. And I had a thought once. I don't want to skip to midway through the movie, but once the movie was over, anyway. I realized not quite. We're not getting through this very fast. But it occurred to me that this was a sort of this was a Beneath the Planet of the Apes situation where the first half of the movie is sort of a speed through.
Right, yeah.
Sometimes literally, of the original movie. And then the second half is a completely different property.
Yeah. The thing
it's kind of that type of sequel.
The thing that I found very interesting watching this movie is that, there are scenes of convenience, which I mentioned earlier, that set up obstacles for the characters and problems. She's got a boyfriend. We'll say nothing of the fact that it's a director sleeping with his actor.
But there's a great meta moment where Ted Danson gets closer to the camera when he says he's a director.
Yeah.
And I was just like, at the time when it happened, I was like, no, maybe I'm reading too much into it. And then at the end of the movie, he looks into the lens. And like, no, that was probably intentional.
Yeah, right. So anyway, we have these moments. So many scenes feel kind of, in this portion of the movie, feel truncated and short, and they're just so that we can show you just enough narrative information so that we can get to England, basically. Yeah. We show Nancy Travis dancing with the boyfriend, and he just says, "Marry me, marry me, marry me." But it doesn't seem like a serious conversation they've been having. It seems like something she's definitely trying to keep him at arm's length for. Yeah. And then the next morning, she's walking down the stairs practicing saying, "I'm going to get married," that kind of thing. But
to your the movie creates problems and then deals with them point. That was something I found that she and Jack look like they're sort of still together in the way they act towards each other, and then you get the scene with her director boyfriend,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, so is she dating them both?
See, but I
and
think...
then the movie has a conversation where it's like, no, the only reason Jack and her are like that is because they're both actors.
Yeah.
Which I think is another great.
That is a great. Yes, that is fantastic. But there, you know, I thought it was. I really enjoyed watching, because it's there. To me, it's there on screen. The director got the performances out of the actors way early in this movie.
Yeah.
There are moments where Tom Selleck is just looking at Nancy Travis, and you think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I know what's going on. He's interested. And you can see the same thing from her. And then, of course, we have this big scene of them doing the Rainmaker together, where it's plainly obvious to everyone except the two characters.
Also plainly obvious that Tom Selleck knows what bad acting is.
Yes!
He just chooses not to do it.
I was just going to say, as a sidebar to that particular scene, I thought it was remarkable that Tom Selleck was able to act as a non-actor trying to act.
It's a real test.
And it's, yeah, like, I thought I really was watching Peter the Architect try something, and then within that is a subtext of what he's feeling for this woman.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting a lot of layers in a Three Men and a Little Lady sequel, you know, character-wise.
Oh, for sure.
And I thought that was really fun to watch.
And I don't mind. I think it's a good choice for the movie for him to take the reins as the romantic lead of the film.
Uh-huh.
I thought in sequel terms, it's a good place for this story to go.
Yeah.
The political undertones of it are whatever they are, but as a straightforward narrative, I thought this was taking advantage of it being a sequel and needing somewhere to go with the romance.
Yeah.
Or even just kind of making it a romance between two people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, you know, this is a point I think we're sort of skirting around, is just how developed this is as a sequel.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the comedy is based on things that the characters have done in previous
movies, sure.
Right. So when Ted Danson says,
$1,000 if you'll do it.
Have I ever let you down?
Yes, right.
You know, the joke is we know he has. That was the
yes, of course. That was the basis of the entire last
he
movie.
let everyone down. And when Sheila Hancock as Sylvia's mother comes in,
yes,
and you know says, "Where's Jack?" You know, spreading his seed, no doubt.
Yes.
Well, not only is it, you know, capitalizing on what we know about the character from the previous movie, Ted Danson really cornered the sperm donor father movie craze of the early 90s. This and Made in America.
Right.
And Cheers.
Yes.
Because isn't he a sperm donor for Rebecca as well?
I think so.
Cheers and then Made in America is all about that.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie really thinks about how it can use being a sequel to get where it needs to go.
Well, and I want to get back to a previous point, because earlier I was talking about, you know, you can see the machinations of a script that needs to get you just where it needs to go, and it wants to give you a scene that gives you just enough information for that. And so in some ways this movie can feel clunky, but always dispersed within that, for me at least, there's always a poignant scene, her calling them out, where, you know, she just needs one moment of them completely and totally supporting her.
Yeah.
You know, there are few scenes in this movie, and they're nicely placed with you know, sporadically through the movie, where there are poignant scenes with actors doing really good work that really make me lean in, and it's good. I mean, it's just flat out good in those moments. The actors are really selling it. And you can see the depth of the relationships in the characters. You feel like they've been together for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that about this movie.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think those are really standout moments, and it kind of glosses over the fact that there's a contradiction at the heart of the movie, that the tension is about men who can't grow up, except we spend a whole movie
Yeah.
getting them to the point where they grew up and they're now parents, and they're now able to reflect on parenting.
Right.
So we have that great scene between Mary and Andrew. Is that Tom Selleck's name? No.
No,
his
he's
name?
Peter.
Peter. Describe it. You know, he basically describes the previous movie to the person it happened to, who just happened to be too young to know it was happening to them. And that's a great sequel moment.
Right.
Because you can't have that scene in any other movie.
Right.
And I think it's beautifully, it's like capitalizing on the fact that you can have a character who can be recapped.
Yeah, right.
By virtue of them being too young to remember what happened. But I mean, it's sort of, it's got that speed through quality. We get a sense pretty early on where this is we know there's going to be a move to England coming up.
Right.
And then you've got you're like, okay, well, that's another sequel convention. We're relocating to another country to switch things up. So you can sort of see where it's going, and we've just got to kind of get through the
machinations.
The machinations, and once they leave, once Sylvia and Mary get in the car at the exact halfway point of the film.
Yes.
I might add. There's a sequel inside this sequel.
Yes, right.
Once we kind of get to that midpoint, we have a kind of a reset where they become the three men that we saw at the beginning of Three Men and a Baby for a scene. For a scene,
but I do like the sense that...
No, I mean, I like that. I like it sort of like... It's like, that asks the question, it's like, well, do we just reset?
Mm-hmm.
And then they realize, oh no, we changed. We're different people.
Right.
It's interesting.
I like the moment where they try to recapture what they had before they were parents and realize that being a parent fundamentally changed them in ways that they appreciate. And they even take the moment, like, for previous friends that might have been at their parties. They say, because they're all married and have kids now, and they're doing stuff, and that's why they didn't come to their party.
Yeah.
And they realize this isn't who we are. This isn't, and it's not what we want. But once we do get to England, I think this movie, there's a weird thing that happens with this movie where you feel as though there is there's a clock ticking, but there's not.
But it's a totally different. It's a totally different movie with a totally different style of comedy.
Yeah.
As soon as they get to England, because the comedy so far has been character based.
Yeah.
Domestic familial comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's the comedy of cultural misunderstanding.
Sure.
To the end of the film.
Yes.
That's a different movie.
Yeah.
With a different understanding of comedy.
Of what? Yes, exactly.
what comedy is. No, I really like the party scene. I loved that the catering was stressed so much.
Yes, right.
Like, nothing says a swinging bachelor party like pasta salad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's broad, it's really broad, like this movie is a lot of the time. But, the montage of Gutenberg showing the pictures and not being able to talk about anything but Mary, and then Rubber Ducky coming on the sound system.
Yeah.
That makes the point.
Sure.
Efficiently, that they're out of step. And shows us that, they've matured beyond their original characters, which is what you want sequel characters to do.
Yeah.
Without losing a sense of who they are. And this does that well, but this is sort of the last time character even matters in the movie.
I mean, it's funny because you have that scene, and I would never want to take that scene out, but you already know that about the characters. And you even get it in a previous scene.
Yeah, but they don't know it about themselves.
That's true. And there's a great scene between Tom Selleck and Mary, between Peter and Mary, when they're just by themselves. And it's a great parenting moment where it felt so honest in the sense of she's worried about being separated from the family dynamic that she has now. And he has to teach her that we're always going to be with you no matter what. Even if we're separated by an ocean, we're still in your hearts. And so we get to see that maturation. We get to see that in a character. And we know that all three men have gone through that. And then, you're right in the sense that it's followed by the characters understanding that.
Yeah, and of course there's also the great scene of where Peter confronts Mary.
Yeah.
And interestingly weaponizes what happened in the last movie.
Right.
And what struck me then was like, it's funny how sequels don't use that kind of ammunition.
Mm-hmm. I thought
all
the
that
same
often.
thing. I thought it was
What a great like, there's like 100 times in a Halloween movie you could go, yeah, well, you let Michael
you
Myers
left the door
out of
unlocked.
prison.
Yeah,
Don't you lecture me
Yeah.
on leaving the door locked, Mr. Michael Myers let-it-goer. But again, that's really good sequel writing.
It's good sequel
I
writing.
suppose-
And beyond that, it's just good dramatic. It's a great dramatic moment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because
And it's, it speaks to again, it's sort of, it's like the conservative voice. Like it's the too conservative side that they want to get away from. It's the sort of I'm skirting around it. It's the Reaganite perspective, isn't it? It's sort of like you're a bad mother.
right.
You neglected your child. It's like all the stuff that Reagan was saying to women who were on welfare.
Yeah, right.
And so what they want to come up with is something which is like, okay, maybe not as drastic as that.
Mm-hmm.
But let's take the elements of that, walk it back a little bit, and meet in the middle.
Yeah, that's right.
Hello, my name is Tony Blair. It's there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that going on. But I love that this is a sort of a line in the sand that gets us into the second act.
You're right.
The second act is
Because it really is a
bananas.
2-act movie. Yeah.
Second act is fucking bananas.
It's crazy.
It's a different movie,
And
and
yet-
it doesn't feel like everything that happens up to this point feels like a movie that comes from 1990.
Yeah.
What happens after that feels like a comedy from a later era.
1940s.
Well, it's like 1940s mixed with mid 1990s British
Okay.
comedy.
All right.
It's sort of we're looking yeah, exactly. We're looking back to the Philadelphia Story.
Yeah, right.
But we're also
right.
looking forward to 4 Weddings and a Funeral
Sure.
at the same time.
And so, I mean, them driving there with the sheep and the guy you can't understand, and
Also, another vivid memory. It just clicked
Really?
as soon as I saw the image. I was just like, I mean, aside from the fact that I'm pretty sure that shot was reused for the opening of Austin Powers, as soon as I saw it, I was like, God, I remember seeing
Yeah.
this in the early 90s.
but it doesn't rub you at all. It doesn't bother you as a British man.
I mean, not in a like it doesn't wound my
Yeah.
it doesn't wound my cultural pride. I think it goes back and forth between lazy stereotype.
Yeah, it's just all
And then
the low-hanging fruit.
Well, but then occasionally you get a sense that they're aware, they're self-aware about the stereotypes.
Yeah, I agree.
There are a few moments kind of thrown in there where you're like, they're saying things that are so ridiculous.
Mhm.
You know that even they know it's not true.
Yeah.
About British people. And there's a few things like that in there, and then other times, like you say, it is just the sort of low hanging fruit cultural stereotypes, national stereotypes. And yeah, it's sort of, I kept thinking like, I don't know how successful this movie necessarily was, but you can draw a direct line from this to 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and then Notting Hill, and then.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like they're road testing this kind of comedy that will go on to be incredibly successful,
Incredibly
throughout the 90s.
popular.
Yeah, and at times even scooping them.
Yeah. Well,
I think Ted Danson's vicar scoops Rowan Atkinson's for weddings
right.
priest.
Well, and I also think there's one character that just steals the show from here on out, and that's Fiona Shaw.
She's excellent. She's
just. I mean,
there was a moment I was watching her and I was like, I bet Phoebe Waller-Bridge watched this when I think we're probably around the same age. If not, if not, I might be a little older, but I think we're the same, roughly of the same generation. I bet she saw Fiona Shaw doing this, and she was like, "That's what I want to be. That's what I want to do.
Right.
And when I have some power, I'm going to write a role for her where she's just a badass."
Yeah.
And hence, that's how Killing Eve came about.
Sure.
I guarantee you, because there's so much Phoebe Waller-Bridge in her performance style.
Yeah. Right.
In exactly that sort of character where she takes this trope of the ugly girl, for want of a better word, and makes it all her own to the point where even the movie has to admit, no, you're an attractive
No, you're
woman.
pretty attractive. Yeah.
There's something about you that is just fun and desirable.
Yes, that is alluring.
And even this stupid way that this role has been written can't drag you down.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, why don't we take another break and then we'll come back and finish up.
And we'll cross the pond.
We will cross the pond, sir.
We got to talk about senile butlers.
Boy, do we. Now that's a runner.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
Here we are, once again. Tom and I are chatting about Three Men and a Little Lady, finishing up with the movie directed by Emil Ardolino.
Or the Emil directed by Movie Ardolino.
There you go.
Makes as much sense.
I'll
as
say.
a sentence.
Are you on my page where narratively we get into some trouble in this half of the movie?
I'm impressed you can find a narrative.
Okay, yeah.
It's just a series of, it's just a comedy of eccentric manners and cultural.
Yeah, not just that, but I guess I spoke earlier about once we get to England, it feels like we have some manufactured time problems. I mean, they're driving in that car through the sheep as though they're going to stop the wedding, but they're not. They're just getting to the castle, you know?
Yeah, I see.
And
what
then
you
we
mean
have
about
to
the ticking clock. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to leave to get the information from the prep school and get back in time and then go back a second time so that we can finally get to the moment where we interrupt the wedding.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So
it's
that is problematic.
When you put it
and
like
even
that,
once characters decide that they're in love with each other, they could end everything by just saying, "I'm in love with you. You shouldn't marry this man," and instead do something else. You know?
Yeah. The way you put it there, it sort of sounds like this should have been a set piece.
Yeah.
And they've turned it into a half of the movie.
A half of a movie, right?
Literally half of the movie.
Yeah.
On the other hand, what's working in their favor is that there is still some work that Peter and Sylvia have to do because of what he said to her.
Yeah.
So without that, it would be even more problematic.
Mm-hmm. Again, great scene. His apologizing.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And
also, this half of the movie does have one of my favorite, if not my favorite scene in the movie.
which is
I don't know if I should bring it up yet, because we're not
such a tease.
quite there.
It's like talking to J.J. Abrams. Never sets stuff up and never explains what it is.
Listen.
Fucking mystery box is over there.
This podcast is not a delivery system for your hatred of J.J. Abrams.
If it was a J...
It's all right?
I agree. It's just become that through time. If this was J.J. Abrams talking about Three Men and a Little Lady, he'd never get around to the little lady, and
Right.
he'd talk about maybe 2.5.
I
of
can
the
tell
men.
you. I'm happy to tell you what it is. if
No,
you'd like.
it's fine. I'm
All right.
Like you say, I'm just using this as a political platform. As well, you've seen through me. No, let's
Yes.
talk about the movie in order, like we always do. In addition to the second half being the Beneath the Planet of the Apes lore unto itself, it's also like to the best of my memory, and it's been a while since I've seen Three Men and a Baby, and I'm excited to go back and watch it, especially remembering it's a Leonard Nimoy film.
Yes.
Is that this feels like a mirror of the first movie, because Danson's absent throughout most of that movie, isn't he? And he's suddenly he's absent again.
Yes. Yeah.
So it feels like we're doing the kind of ring theory thing of going around, going full circle, and he keeps
there is no crime to solve in this movie.
He's like popping in with colorful costumes.
Yes, right.
Which I remember him doing in the first movie as well.
I love the guy calling him Chiquita Banana or whatever.
Yeah, and we've gushed over Danson, but haven't mentioned that one of the great running. Well, again, with Danson, it's not a gag; it's a character thing of him being schmoozed by.
Right.
Her. What is he called? Andrew? No. What's his name?
The boyfriend?
Name? Yeah.
Edward.
Edward.
Right?
Of course he's called Edward. By the way, peak period for the British bounder.
Oh, yeah?
Edward is such a, that episode of Seinfeld where Elaine has a British boyfriend and he's kind of steals all her money and just drinks all her booze.
Yeah.
Exploits her apartment. And they have a conversation where they say, "Yes, he's one of those bounders." And I think Edward is cut from the same cloth. But anyway, the whole idea of he's being schmoozed by Edward, and the character runner of, "Am I a good enough actor to fool you?"
Mm-hmm.
It's all it's like people really believed I was constipated, and that.
Oh,
it's such a great character thing to carry through the entire movie.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's Danson doing it means that you're invested in it in a way you wouldn't necessarily be with another actor. I think, anyway. But
I agree with you.
There's not much that carries through the movie, because this movie's so divided against itself. But that's definitely one of them.
That's
really,
for sure. It goes through
because you get the most you get the most amazing payoff of that at the. In the final scene, one of the most unexpected scenes in probably cinema history, for various reasons.
Yeah.
There were a lot of basically there were a lot of revelations here for me in this second half of the movie. As soon as I saw the red Mini and the sheep, I visualized a motorbike and sidecar, so I knew that was coming.
Yeah, right.
Which is crazy, given that
because I forgot about the sheep, but
I would have been 9 the last time I saw this film.
Okay, I forgot about the sheep, but it clicked, like you
I
said.
didn't
It
know
clicked the
how a
moment I saw
motorbike and
it.
sidecar were going to factor into the story, but I knew it was
See
coming.
that I remembered clear as a
Okay.
bell. I knew that we were getting to the church in a motorcycle and sidecar.
But I knew it was going to happen at some point. You know, it's
Yeah.
like deja vu. I knew
Mhm.
it was coming.
Absolutely.
At one point, they say that the boarding school is in West Riding. So I was age 40 when I realized this film is set in the county that I grew up in.
I can't believe that you didn't glom onto that as a kid.
It's a little young to be like. It certainly didn't
Wow.
didn't seem like where I grew up. The world they were in. And in addition to that, just the mere mention of boarding school in this film sent a chill down me.
Oh,
And I realized that when I saw this when I was 9 years old, this instilled a kind of innate fear of boarding school in me. And again, it was like it was like a deja vu moment, because I went, as soon as they started to talk about boarding school, it's like, I feel a little bit sick. Why
Oh,
do I
wow.
feel sick? And then, of course, you get the scene where they go to the boarding school and it's like a prison.
yeah, it's pretty terrible.
And you can imagine being the same age and seeing that and how
Sure.
it would instill a fear into you. But it was like it was like primeval kind of.
Well, and the thing that
Like, it made me feel physically sick, and I didn't know why. And then I saw the scene. I guess at 9, I must have seen this and been physically repulsed by it. And now I'm feeling
Right.
the after effects of that. Crazy.
the thing that made that the questions that kept popping in my head when we do go to the boarding school is
Yeah.
knowing that this very charming, effervescent woman is in
I know.
charge of the boarding
Doesn't
school.
work, does it?
And yet says, keeps kind of hinting at characters and vicariously the audience that this is all very British and what we do and very important. We bring out, it's, what we do is we turn out great young men and women through
I
this
think,
process.
honestly,
But there's something that there's just doesn't work when you have
yeah.
that character in charge.
I think it took the Harry Potter book and film franchise to sort of reinvigorate children's faith in the idea of boarding
In the
school.
idea of a boarding
Because they would
school.
leave this film absolutely terrified of the prospects.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's like the antagonist, isn't it? It's like she's gonna go to boarding school and, I don't know, end up hanging herself like the boy ghost in the last movie.
Right.
Had to get that in somewhere.
How dare
There's
you?
a chance we'll never talk about it, so I gotta mention the boy ghost.
Such a dick.
So there was lots of, there was lots for me to psychologically dig into. This was a real therapy session for me.
Fantastic.
And of course, Fiona Shaw's in the Harry Potter films. She's
Yeah.
she's Harry's
Aunt.
aunt. Yeah. So yeah, so we're somewhere in a boarding school. Fiona Shaw's falling over tables, trying to be solitary.
Yes.
Amazing stuff.
So
Great work from her.
so
And
good.
Sheila Hancock has a more of a thankless role in this movie, but she's got a few good jabs, a few good one-liners.
I agree. Yeah.
I love her independent of this, but I think she's great.
Well, I thought it was
Class.
really.
Both
I thought it
class.
was really interesting that a one-note character went beyond one note, because there are moments where
Yeah.
Sylvia's mother is saying this wouldn't happen to do with a tall man with a mustache,
Mhm.
and that shows she knows her daughter.
Yeah.
You know?
It's really good. I think and again, this is where sort of Tom Selleck's innate acting ability, like he knows to take it down when Fiona Shaw's around. So you get this wonderful interplay of him being very dour and straight and understated, and her being really kind of zany and hurried and frazzled.
Oh, I got to tell you, they got a big laugh out of me when she opened up that closet and just sort of the morose sitting.
Yeah,
in the
absolutely, yeah.
closet, you know, knowing he's going to get caught.
But
Man.
it like he has to make a choice, doesn't he, to play it all down.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite comedic moments in the film is when you get to the motorbike and sidecar, and this is really good, just comic timing, but it's an interplay of three different timings. So you've got Tom Selleck, who is slow. Well, in fact, he's stationary.
Right.
Fiona Shaw is checking a watch and looking up and down.
She's
and
busy.
doing all sorts of
She's
things.
busy.
And then the motorbike and sidecar is going at medium pace. So it's like meeting in the middle between the two of them.
Yeah.
And I did more than the shot of, well, not them, but whoever, the stunt people, like appearing for the first time. That's the funnier bit in that sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still some good comedic stuff in this section, but it's kind
There's
of the
still some
movie's
funny
sort of
stuff,
it's
but
fallen away in a big way.
yeah, for sure.
Here's
not-
something
Yeah.
that struck me. How much American movie comedy is based around the idea of jilting a spouse at the altar?
Yeah, I know, right?
I mean, Philadelphia Story,
Mm-hmm.
Graduate, this, Four Weddings and a Funeral,
Mm-hmm.
which I guess is British American, Notting Hill, or, it just, like, and, not to mention just that, I mean, the comedies that are just comedies of remarriage, which was, I think, the term Robin Wood came up with to describe a lot of rom-coms that were about people remarrying, like His Girl Friday and
Right,
The
sure.
Awful Truth. The Runaway Bride.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah.
It's like, this is a real weird pattern that needs
So
investigating.
you don't get that a lot? You don't get it? That's not a British thing? It's unique to America?
Not necessarily, but I think, the classic example for me is the Philadelphia Story. That must be one of the first examples of it. And that's why it's kind of crucial that they set up earlier in the movie that... Did we know before that Tom Selleck had an ex-wife?
No. And so we're getting into the area of the part that I was mentioning earlier that I really love, because this is the part that... I mean, we already talked about the motorbike. We already talked about the motorbike, which is what sends... the scene I'm about to talk about sends him to the prep school for a second time to try to find the evidence. But it's this scene between him and Ted Danson, because we get a lot more of information. Speaking to sequel writing, we find out that these three men have been living together for at least 7 years, 5 years with Mary and Sylvia, but it's Jack and it's Peter that are best friends.
Yeah.
That's not information given previously. And you find out... he has a scene with Sylvia earlier in the movie where you found out that he was previously married. But you find out more about that marriage in this scene. And you find out, the things that don't seem to make sense that I referenced earlier. Like, you could just have one conversation and this whole movie's over. But you get a character reason here where Tom
I think
Selleck...
that's important.
It's really important for me to not completely dismiss the movie or so much of the movie, because you get a character reason where he's afraid. He's afraid he's gonna, not that he could mess up Jack's life, Michael's life, and his own life. He thinks he'll fuck it up again.
Yeah.
And it's too much for him to bear, so he won't take the risk. And then on top of all that, I love that the character that Ted Danson is playing in Jack can see that in him because they're so close.
Yeah.
And then we even have a moment, which I think is really progressive for a 1990 movie, where one man says to the other man, "I love you."
Yeah.
And it's not, "I love you, man." It's not, "Love you, buddy." It's not, they don't cut the I off. He says, "I love you."
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing for a movie from 1990, because male love, platonic love, is not represented very often on film. And I found this moment to be so sweet and so endearing and so progressive. And they're both acting the shit out of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was great.
And in general, I think all of them do a great job, and the screenplay does a great job of suggesting alternate kinds of masculinity.
Yeah.
That don't have to do with machismo.
Mm-hmm.
That have
Because
to do with
Ted Danson's character Jack is as flagrant a womanizer as you can have in a movie, but it's not wrapped up in machismo.
No, absolutely.
It's who he is as a person. That's you know.
So I think the movie's pretty good at showing a broad spectrum of masculinity, and where where it dovetails with traditional ideas about masculinity and femininity, and breaks down some of those barriers between them in quite a fluid way that doesn't feel like transvestitism or anything like that.
Yeah, right.
Although he does dress up as Carmen Miranda at one point.
Yeah.
Or Chiquita Banana, I guess. Speaking to the that this is still the 80s, even though it's 1990. My parents were married in 1986, and the bride and flower girl dresses that Sylvia and Mary were wearing looked exactly the same.
Oh, wow. Nice.
It's like, we're basically still in the 80s.
They got that right.
Oh, yeah, we got to talk about the senile butler.
Yeah.
They get a lot of comic mileage out of this, I'll say that for them.
They definitely do.
But did you feel like this was a one-time gag that sort of sprawled into a runner?
Oh, sure.
I don't think there's any other way to look at it.
By the time we get to the end, he's doing a one-man wave in the church, like at a sporting event. That is, even for a senile old man, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right.
You know? So that's how far the joke goes.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you can see that it makes the movie... You know, we talked earlier about this movie sitting at 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. And moments like that, I think, are a cheap, easy way for a critic to knock this movie down a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
And not give it the credit that it really deserves.
Right.
In terms of both being a sequel and a movie with plenty of great character work. And a lot of good writing. You know?
Yeah.
So in that way, it bums me out that, you know, it delves into those tendencies, you know?
Also, you know, it would have been very successful. Like if it was just the first joke, it would have landed very well, because that joke lands of him sort of saying, you know, try to take a leak in that. And it's like, oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
That's like, that's really all you need.
That's all you
But
needed.
it just keeps going and going and going, and in every scene there's something else.
I would have accepted that and him just playing hide and seek or hot and cold with Mary.
Well, Pete pissing in the bathroom is pretty good,
Yeah.
because that is sort of, I don't know, it's just like actual senility. Because it's not a joke, really. It's just inappropriate behavior.
Yeah. And actually, I think that joke lands better if he doesn't come out of the bathroom without his pants on.
Oh, well, yes.
If I just, I had to piss, so I pissed. I'm at least an 85-year-old butler. What can you possibly expect of me?
Yeah. Now, let's talk the prosthetic Protestant.
Okay.
Ted Danson. Showstopper for this movie.
Oh, man.
I mean, I absolutely remember it.
Yeah.
But
Right?
I think I have a feeling my reaction to it now and my reaction to it then were the same, which is that it scared me. I didn't find it funny or cute. I just think it's a bit creepy.
I don't think you're wrong.
I think they missed the mark tonally on some of this. Not to say that Danson isn't doing a great work.
Right. That's the thing that's interesting to me. I'm of two minds of the Vicar. Because there's a part of me that thinks there's no way Sylvia wouldn't know that that's Ted Danson, that that's Jack. There's just no way. And yet I also revel in the Ted Danson performance of it. The hiccups
and
in
the dialogue is good too.
The dialogue, like the hiccups in
funny.
his speech,
Yeah.
him, thinking he's seeing something, not seeing something, and
Yeah.
you realize, of course, for the character,
delay
he's
tactics.
just trying to delay,
It's funny.
and all of it plays, as funny. I think Ted Danson, I guess I feel like the makeup is so extreme because he looks
it's
like a burn
legitimately
victim
terrifying.
that it's so frightening that it actually delegitimizes his performance a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I 100%
And-
agree.
Because I think the performance is just fucking fantastic.
Yeah, and the shades of it's looking back to Peter Cook in The Princess Bride,
Yeah, very much.
and it's
yeah.
looking forwards to Rowan Atkinson in Four Weddings and a
Sure.
Funeral, and it's kind of and it's very funny. I think they think that when he takes off his skin, that it should read as zany fun, but
yeah,
to me, it's pure body horror.
completely. It's completely frightening. It's terrifying.
I mean, I took some stills of, maybe we'll post them,
Yeah,
of the shots of him taking his skin off. And, if you told me that that was in Hellraiser,
I believe
I'd be
it.
like, sure, yeah.
Especially the moment of taking off the top of the skull to reveal his hair.
Yeah, and taking out his teeth. And
The teeth.
I remember all of that viscerally, which tells me that they missed the mark. Because I remember that. I remember that viscerally as a 9-year-old. And I don't think that's what they were going for with that scene.
Oh man, that's great.
They even managed to throw in a Great Escape style stunt in the
They
middle of
do.
this.
Very much. Yeah.
And that, I guess that's another point. You mentioned the Senile Valley, bums you out. I wouldn't say this necessarily bummed me out, but it made me think, have we come too far from the original movie?
Mm.
Should all this, sure, we're in a different kind of comedy in the second half of the movie. We've just got to accept that. But do we have to accept that we've strayed, that we've
So far.
bastardized what this
And
movie
because
was about?
also because it's so intentional. Because he rides up to the fence exactly like McQueen rides up
Yeah.
to the fence, and then
I know.
rides away from it
Yeah.
and then jumps it.
I don't know, is that a comment on the transatlantic nature of the film?
I don't know. Yeah.
Split with British and American actors. It's that, and as I say, literally you've got to be along for the ride or not at this point, because you've had a whole half a movie of it. But it's pretty much the only point where I was like, can you really claim to be a sequel to Three Men and a Baby when you're doing this kind of stuff? But I don't know. I mean, this is a question we face all the time. It's like, how far can you stray from the original blueprint
Yeah. Right.
and still feel like you're part of the same world? And it's hard.
But it's also still doing that sequel thing of being bigger. So it feels like it's raising stakes in a way.
Yeah. But there's no action in the original.
No, exactly. But that's the
So
thing that's weird about it.
this is what I mean.
know? Yeah.
There's no equivalent of this.
No. Certainly not for the end of the movie. That first movie has a weird subplot involving drugs and cops and drug dealers.
Does it really? God, it's a while since I've
Yeah.
seen it. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe
I always remember that being one of the biggest complaints from critics for that first movie. And it seems weird and inexplicable.
they do mention the drugs in this one, don't they? At one
Do
point. I think so. I think it's
Okay.
thrown back, because they like to weaponize things that people did wrong in the previous movie, and I think they throw that back at is it Jack, right?
Jack. Well, it's certainly within the scope of that comment of when have I ever let you down. I mean, the baby is, of course. But
I think
wrapped
that's
in
I
that
think
is-
that's the point where they say you did this and then you did this with drugs.
Yeah. Okay.
This movie does end with Danson looking directly into the camera,
Right into the camera.
which is
But
interesting.
I got one more question for you before we get to that.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Because we were speaking earlier about, the sort of paradigm of this movie and what it feels it must do, which is have two people actually get married at the end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that always bothers me is that these two people decide to just go on with a wedding in the church,
Right.
despite the fact that half the people there were there to see the other man get married.
That happens in the
And-
Philadelphia story, so I guess
Yeah. I guess it's leaning towards that.
it's a trope.
But for this movie, and considering the family dynamic that it had, whenever I see it, I always wish that Tom Selleck would just say, "Marry me, don't marry me, whatever, just let's be together. You're the person that I love." And on top of that, we're all a family,
Yeah, and that's it. It's you end with a blended family, but one which is far less radical than the one that we started with.
Yeah, right.
And it does feel like the traditional institutions have sort of returned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, again, at that point you just have to be along for the ride.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
Don't you think
It always
that,
just bums me out.
that Tom Selleck's outfits in this movie are exactly what he would have worn as Indiana Jones in the Professor scenes?
Probably.
Again, I wish
Bow
there was
tie.
a way. Wish there was a
Bow
way.
tie. I'd love to go back and see what would have happened.
Is it too late? It's too late.
It's too late.
No one would ever accept him as Indiana Jones now.
How great if we made one more Indiana Jones movie with a really old Indiana Jones, but with Tom Selleck instead.
He could be, basically play the role he played in the Rockford Files, where he could be Indiana Jones's rival.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever seen the Magnum P.I. episode? That's the Indiana Jones ripoff?
No, I have never seen that, no.
It's, if you want a little flavor
Okay.
of Tom Selleck as Indiana Jones, you watch that episode. I remember it being fun.
I'm sure
Because,
it was a great, Mountain P.I. was a great show.
yeah.
But
at any rate, we do get Ted Danson staring straight down the barrel of the camera.
this is where it
And,
feels
and
like...
this feels very 1980s.
It also feels like the parody version of the movie.
Yeah, yes.
But also, I feel like Danson's is the most meta character in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's an actor, because
Right.
he's the clown, because he's always on set in costumes.
In costume, yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess it makes sense that he would be the one of any of them to look in the camera. What am I saying? Justifying it to myself. But it does see, but like, I don't know, it feels like the whole film has been telling me that Tom Selleck is the lead of this movie, and then the final shot is of Ted Danson. So
Yeah.
it's a little incoherent.
Yeah, but I think this movie
and
knows.
where
I think
does
this movie
poor
knows.
Steve Guttenberg fit into all of this?
Right.
And I wonder whether this was just like inspiration, like, cut, print, we got it.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
like they just saw the shot and was like, oh, we've got to make this the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, he's not really the lead of the movie. Never mind.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Well, what about a credit check?
sure. So, here's a question. Do you think the 5 stuntmen credited here would readily admit to their buddies at the bar that they were part of 3 Men and a Little Lady?
I think so, because I think they would mention it. There would be some guffaws, and then they'd say, "Hey, go watch the movie.
We
Quite a
reenacted
good
the Great
motorcycle
Escape.
jump." Yeah.
More people worked on ADR for this film than in virtually any other department. This makes me wonder whether anyone actually speaks on film with a microphone in this movie.
All right.
Mr. Danson's old vicar makeup designed by. You are unlikely to get a more specific credit in all of film history than that.
Was the person undead themselves?
I mean, he certainly looked like a supernatural being.
Yeah.
What's that? Trying to think of what it is he looks like.
You know what he looks like? He looks like Kane.
Yes, that's
what
it.
he looks like. Yeah.
He looks like the when it was in Poltergeist
Sorry, everyone.
3.
We're going back to Poltergeist 2.
Well, I'll tell you what he looks like. He looks like Poltergeist 3 when they just put that mask on that guy
Yeah.
and said, "This is Kane."
This is Kane. Oh.
The 3 Men rap was
Yes, I remember
written
seeing
by,
that credit.
G. Love E. and Charlie Peters. Now, which of those 2 men do you think is a black rap artist, and which do you
which
think
one
is
is
a
white?
white film producer? To be perfectly honest, I am amazed that anyone African American was involved in the creation of that piece of music.
Yeah.
But there you go.
All right.
I thought the black accents that they were using just kind of ruled out any contribution by anyone authentic.
Yes.
That's it. That's my credit check.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've revisited. We're started revisiting
Yeah.
the single sequels from 1990, and
It's
that
not over
is
yet,
3
not by a
Men.
long shot.
Nope. We got plenty of work to do. That's 3 Men and a Little Lady. You're going to have to tell us what you think of this movie. Tom, we haven't discussed it yet, but is this a good movie?
Can we save that till the wrap up episode? Do we have to?
You want to? Okay. We'll save it
Yeah,
for the wrap up.
I with this one, I need context and perspective.
Okay.
Because for various reasons that I've discussed, I'm very attached to this film in ways I didn't understand until seeing it recently and getting some serious flashbacks,
All right.
PTSD moments. So
Well, stay tuned for that, everyone.
I choose to reserve judgment until I've reminded myself of what else is on offer.
Perfect. All right. Well, you can at least tell us what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter and send us a message. Let us know what you think of 3 Men and a Little Lady. We got another 1990 sequel coming at you next week. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. Say goodbye, Tom.
You can't swing a dead cat around the British countryside without hitting a vicar.
I like that first vicar too. I thought he was funny.
Yeah, the food obsessed.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, but is there any? What was it? He wanted salmon. But is there any more salmon?
Yeah, as a